The Lord is my light and my salvation, was our psalm response today. In other words, I think we could say that God is on your side. God is on our side. And how comforting those words are. To know that wherever we find ourselves in life, that God is on our side. That God is for us, he's not against us. But it would be a mistake for us to hear those words, God's on my side, and then assume that God always agrees with me. I can think of many times growing up, especially as a high schooler, where I knew and I could rest in the fact that my parents were on my side. Namely, they wanted what was best for me. They ultimately were for me, not against me. And yet often, they did not agree with me. Or what I was doing did not agree with them. And yet to then know that my parents were on my side would give me this impulse, almost this desire to want them to agree with me. Or at least to live my life in such a way that it would make them proud. And so when we hear that God is on your side, that God is on my side, and then also to know that that doesn't mean he necessarily agrees with everything that I think, everything that I do, it should give us that same impulse that I want to live my life in such a way that it does agree with what God wants for me. Why? Because what God wants for me is the best thing. He wants my greatest good. And that's what our letter to the Hebrews today in the first reading is getting at. The group of people and the time in which this letter was being written was kind of it was written to Jewish people, but everywhere around them, all of the other religions, their idea of God or the gods was, I just got to kind of keep them at bay. But even if I worship them, it doesn't really need to change anything about my life. But Hebrews and the gospel message is, hey, because I believe in the word and the God of Jesus Christ, that means it's supposed to change everything about my life. And so Hebrews today just gives us some of those ways in which our lives, because of Jesus, are meant to change. And it starts off pretty simple. Be hospitable. In other words, like, hey, if you believe in Jesus, be nice to people. And that's easy enough. Like, we can get on board with that. But then it starts to kind of ramp up. Care about those who are imprisoned. That becomes a little more difficult. Like, go out of your way to care for those who are outcast and who no one pays any mind. And then it goes on to things that are more personal. Don't be immoral. Keep the marriage bed undefiled. These things that maybe strike a little bit closer to home, and maybe we find ourselves at odds. Does God agree with me in those personal areas of my life? Maybe not, but that's okay. Because whether or not God agrees with you isn't the most important thing. The most important thing is that God's on your side. God's on your side. And so to allow ourselves continually to be changed by the gospel, that our worship of Jesus is getting into the nitty-gritty of our lives. And that's what's ultimately for our best. Why? Because God's for us. He's not against us.